Hello, and welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. My name is Chris, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you to the Unity of Fredericksburg weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. We thank those of you watching on YouTube, live, or later, and we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room. You'll get the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Our weekly newsletter includes the Sunday service link, and you can subscribe to receive that on our website at uofva.org. For everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to the newsletter at uofva.org for all the details. Our message today comes from our minister, Reverend Cheryl Fair. And now, here's Reverend Cheryl.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome everyone who is with me in the Zoom room right now. How wonderful to gather together in this way. And all of you who are watching YouTube or picking our recording up later on social media, we are so happy to have you as a part of the energy that is Unity of Fredericksburg. So welcome today. Our broadcast date is Sunday, July the 5th. And I don't know about you all, but at our house, we're at the height of garden season. We've got so many things coming in out of the garden, so I have a little gardening story for you. So, a very old gentleman lived alone in the country. It was spring and he wanted to dig his tomato garden as he had done every year, but the ground was so hard. His only son, Vincent, used to help him, was currently in jail, accused of holding up a jewelry store. The old man wrote a letter to his son and described his predicament. Dear Vincent, I'm feeling pretty bad because it looks like I won't be able to plant my garden this year. I'm just getting too old for all the digging. If only you were here, my troubles would be over. I know you would till the garden for me. Love, Dad. A few days later, Vincent received a letter from his son. Dear Dad, under no circumstances dig up the garden. I'll explain more when and if I get out of jail. Love, Vinny. At 4 a.m. the next morning, FBI agents and local police arrived at the old man's house and dug up the entire backyard. They didn't find anything, so they apologized to the old man and left. That same day, the old man received another letter from his son. Dear Dad, go ahead and plant the tomatoes now. This was the best I could do under the circumstances. So I hope you find that funny. I found a couple of little garden things. One other little short one. It's more like a saying. Knowledge is knowing tomatoes are fruit. Understanding is not to put tomatoes in a fruit salad. So there's your little garden bits to get ourselves going this morning. Today we are finishing up our series of 4 talks on The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. I want to point out that the book that I have is the 25th anniversary edition. I mentioned that because I know there are different editions. I am finding different page numbers and chapter names and things like that. So I'm hoping you can keep track of what I'm talking about. This book was requested as a part of our annual discernment at the end of 2025 when we were saying what we want to do in 2026. And do want to say in general that Gary Zukav, the author, does not present himself as following a particular religious or spiritual path. The seat of the soul presents his personal understanding of the nature of the non-physical universe or metaphysics, right? So I encourage you, if you're reading along, just listening to these talks, just take what works for you and what doesn't work for you right now, just kind of, as the minister that I learned from would always say, just put it on the shelf in the closet of your mind. Maybe you'll take it down later and work with it. Don't throw it out, just kind of tuck it away. Maybe you'll use it again later. So I will not be able to cover every topic in this book, and he does take some pretty involved side paths that I'm just kind of skipping over. Um, Today, I am drawing from the last two sections of the book. There are like four big sections. The last two sections are called responsibility and power. And so I'm going to be drawing bits and pieces from chapters 11 through 16. Obviously, not all of it, bits and pieces. And as we go, as I have been trying to relate this to unity teachings. And for those of you who want to participate, we will be having a follow-up discussion night on Tuesday, July the 7th. So I encourage you to come and participate in that. So the first thread that I'm following through this last part of the book is continuing to look at the basic premise that Gary Zukav presents us with, which is a model of human evolution. So he shares his perspective that humanity is evolving from five sensory beings, so beings that basically evaluate and navigate the world based on our human senses, to multi-sensory beings, where we know and are aware that there is existence beyond what we can touch and see and hear. This process of evolution is the process by which we become truly aware of our innate wholeness, our divinity, and the word that Gary Zukav uses so often, our soul, our divine nature. Now, we say this is happening, Gary claims it's happening, but you may look around your world and not see a whole lot of evidence of this process of evolution, right? Sometimes things look pretty rough out there in the outer world. Now, Gary Zukav says that one reason for this is that our outer world is an expression of the five sensory humans, right? Based on ego and personality and what we know of the outer world, that's how the outer world is fashioned. And we all have a choice to either just lean into that and say, this is reality, or to actively engage with this evolutionary process that he's talking about to multi-sensory awareness. So intentionally tapping into our intuition, into our inner knowing of something beyond what we see with our human eyes. And when we look out at this outer world, we can clearly see that not everyone is choosing to participate in this evolution intentionally. Some of us are choosing not to. On page 159, he talks about this when he says, some have chosen to align themselves like mannequins with the dying consciousness of the five sensory human that has exited with the collective consciousness that has existed within the collective consciousness of each of our nations. These souls represent a form of power that is no longer effective, but they have failed to understand that. They draw them to themselves those whose consciousness are aligned symbolically and in terms of beliefs to their own. So you can certainly look around the world and see evidence of this. Like, I want to be loving and spiritual, and look what's going on over there. Now, when we witness this, we have the choice. We have the choice to react and get involved with all that drama that we see going on, or we can choose the path of spirit, lean into the way of the multisensory human. And Gary Zukav in this book offers us many ways to access that process of evolution. And we have touched on those over the past several weeks. He has presented mindful practices of intention and choice. So let me follow up by sharing a quote about that from page 150. Your decision to evolve consciously through responsible choice contributes not only to your own evolution, but to the evolution of all of those aspects of humanity in which you participate. It is not just you that is evolving through your decisions, but the entirety of humanity. If you wish the world to become loving and compassionate, become loving and compassionate yourself. If you wish to diminish fear in the world, diminish your own. These are the gifts that you can give. So he offers us that. And then he also offers us, and this is something we've shared before, to engage in reverence for all life. And here's a quote about that from page 154. You are related to every form of life upon this planet and beyond. As your soul evolves, you move into greater awareness of the nature of that relationship and the responsibilities that you assume. So if you choose to evolve, you will find that managing the challenges of your human life will become a more mindful and meaningful experience. As many of us experience, as Zukav points out on page 190, awareness first enters into an unaware personality through crisis. Has anyone ever experienced that? Where you're in the most challenging thing you've ever been through, and you all of a sudden find the doors to a greater awareness are open in those moments, or you've gotten through the very worst thing and you look back at that personal crisis and realize all that you learned and gained through that experience. These kinds of experiences are painful and yet also meaningful and productive in healing at the soul level. You kind of look back and go, oh, wow, look what I just did. So here's a little quote about that. And this is from page 183. Pain by itself is merely pain, but the experience of pain coupled with an understanding that the pain serves a worthy purpose is suffering. Suffering is meaningful. Suffering can be endured because there is a reason for it, and that is worth the effort. What is more worthy of your pain than the evolution of your soul? So, as we look back on our own growth, the things that we've been through, we gain compassion and insight for ourselves. We can look back and notice how we were previously and go, oh, look at that. Bless your heart. And then we can breathe in this moment and go, now I understand. And it also extends our capacity to feel compassion for the behavior of others who are also on their own path of healing. Now, in some parts of the book, Zukav refers to folks who are just out there really bumbling along that we observe maybe in a judgmental kind of way. He refers to them. I don't really care for this phrase, but I want to acknowledge it. He refers to them as shattered souls. And he talks about how we can, as we learn and grow, can respond to them in different ways. So here's a quote from page 190. When pain is seen, it is not responded to. If we do not respond to it with judgment or ugliness or avoidance, but recognize the soul is shattered. In this way, we shall say, in this circumstance, let us heal him. Let us heal her. Let us not run from the unattractiveness of a shattered soul. So this is a shift that he proposes we can undergo as we learn and grow, that we no longer just automatically look at what that other person is doing and label it and judge it and get it, but claim healing for them. Recognize that they, just like us, are on the path of healing. They're in a different place than we are. They're expressing in a different way that we are, but it is not ours to judge. So reflect on that, my friends. Ask yourself, how capable am I to step away from judgment and claim healing for another person? Gary Zukav assures us that this process of human evolution is happening despite the appearances when we're observing other people doing things that we think are not right. So here's a quote from page 192. Our species is again being given the chance to choose how it will learn, how it will evolve. And on 193, he says, the negativity of the last 2,000-year cycle is being collected now so that it can be discharged and transformed. So he's looking at that kind of longer arc of development, of evolution. This is very similar to things that are presented in a model called spiral dynamics, which we will have an activity sharing about that later on this year. So it's not just Gary Zukav who is encouraging us to take that long view and not get caught in whatever's stirring up in front of us. So take a pause right here, my friends, and take a breath. Let's just reflect for a moment on this idea, this divine idea of evolution, of how we can use intention and reverence to plug into that. And let's affirm, shall we? As I choose, I evolve, and I am grateful. Let me say it one more time. As I choose, I evolve, and I am grateful. Okay, we're going to look at 3 more key concepts as succinctly as I'm able to present them from the seed of the soul. The next one is there's an entire chapter that he calls illusion. So what he's presenting is that the outer world that we operate in as humans is the arena, the realm in which our souls have agreed to show up and play together to do the work of healing. He calls it a couple of times the Earth School. And he proposes that when we believe that what we're perceiving with our 5 senses is the only truth, then we are living in a state of illusion, because what our 5 senses shows us is not the totality of truth, is it? We know there is more beyond that. So, but when we buy into that, we are in that illusion. Now, this concept of illusion is common to many faith paths. It shows up in plenty of different ways, including unity. In unity, we teach that the human senses show us separation, and the way of spirit shows us oneness. When we say oneness, we're not talking about me and the person who from a different part of the world who speaks a different language who I've never met before are one in on the human level, but at the level of spirit, we are all one. And Unity also teaches that when we're in this human operation mode, ego-based error thinking creates, kind of a false world that we're living in. And spiritual consciousness reveals the real one. Now, according to Gary Zukav, the more we're able to open our awareness to spirit, the less we will be traumatically impacted by the challenges of the outer world. On page 196, he says a personality with knowledge of the illusion and how it works is able to live within it and not be affected by it. So as we evolve, we can reach that phase when we find ourselves just noticing what's happening without getting all in it and reacting to it. This can be things outside or within ourselves, like, look at me, show with all this going on. Now, that doesn't mean that our human brain shuts down. So we're just noticing that we're having thoughts, that we're having feelings, but we're not diving into it and getting all stirred up over it. We notice, we pause, and we respond from a level of soul awareness. So it's kind of like we're observing the illusion of what's going on and we're saying, okay, but from the level of the soul, from the level of the spirit, what's going on here? One of the things that Gary Zukav says on page 197 about interactions between people out here in Earth School is what exists between souls is love. And that is all that exists. So all this other stuff that we observe and get ourselves engaged in, illusion. Interesting. And that all we need to do is practice love in all circumstances. So let's have an affirmation right there. I establish truth in my life from the perspective of spirit, and I am grateful. I establish truth in my life from the perspective of spirit, and I am grateful. Next topic, authentic power. And Gary Zukav has, an entire chapter called Power. Now in Unity, we know that power is one of our 12 powers, the power of mastery. We know that we are masters of our own consciousness, not the outer world, but our thoughts, our feelings. Nobody else is in charge of that but you. All right. Now, Gary Zukav he explains kind of the aspects, the qualities of having authentic empowerment. So on page 213, he says, an authentically empowered person is humble, responds to the beauty in each and every soul, treasures and honors, and reveres life in all forms. Next, on page 215, he says, an authentically empowered person is one who forgives. So one who does not carry the baggage of an experience around, dumping it here and there, one who does not hold others responsible for our own experiences. And on page 2018, he says, an authentically empowered human being is clear in their perceptions and thinking. They have clarity. So this sense of authentic empowerment means you're able to kind of see the soul, the activity of that soul healing in action in the physical world and able to shift an experience that on the human level is painful to a meaningful process of learning and healing that he calls suffering. And he closes that chapter on power with this sentence on page 222: humbleness, forgiveness, clarity, and love are the dynamics of freedom. They are the foundations of authentic power. All right, we're running long today. Hang with me. Let's do an affirmation right here. I seek to see and be divine love in all circumstances. I seek to see and be divine love in all circumstances. One more topic, my friends, and that is the topic of trust. So here's what Gary Zukav has to say on page 223 in his chapter on trust. Each soul comes to the earth with gifts. A soul does not incarnate only to heal and to balance its energy, to pay its karmic debts, but also to contribute its specialness in specific ways. Each soul brings the particular configurations of the life force that it is to the needs of the Earth School. It does this with purpose and intention. So as we learn, grow, and heal, we develop a sense of our soul's activity, of its task in this life, and we learn to trust. And as we do, our activities kind of carry that energy of purpose and meaning. Now, Gary Zukav's concept of trust is very similar to Unity's power of faith. When we trust, when we are faithful, we know that the universe provides all that is needed in any given circumstance, even when those resources that we think we need are not evident to our human senses. So here's what he has to say on page 228 around trust. Take your hands off the steering wheel. Be able to say to the universe, thy will be done. And to know it within your intentions. Spend time in this thought. Consider what it means to say, thy will be done, and allow your life to go into the hands of the universe completely. The final piece of reaching for authentic power is releasing your own to a higher form of wisdom. Trust the universe. In any circumstance, you don't have to think of something or make something happen. You merely have to be open to receive and trust. Here's an affirmation. As I trust, I experience abundance, and I am grateful. As I trust, I experience abundance, and I am grateful. All right, my friends, we're going to make our shift into our time in the stillness together based on this divine idea of trust. I'm also using the word faith. So let's experience that a little bit more before we move into our time in the stillness. So right now, take a couple of deep breaths. Just relax into this moment. If you wish, you can allow your outer eyes to drift closed or soften your gaze. I'm going to read a little bit more from the Seat of the Soul. This is actually from the study guide that's in my book, page 329. For the next week, act as if you trusted the universe to be wise and compassionate. Every time you encounter a difficult situation, person, or experience, remember to pay attention to the physical sensations you're feeling and the thoughts you're thinking, and ask yourself, if I trusted the universe, what would this help me to see about myself that's important for me to know or to learn? If I trusted the universe, what strengths and clarity would this help me to develop? If I trusted the universe, how would I see this differently? And let's take that reflection into our time in the stillness together right now. And as we begin to bring our attention back to the present moment here in the physical room that we're in these human bodies that we express through, we will close out our time in the stillness with a few more affirmations. I trust the wisdom of my soul more than the fears of my personality. I'll repeat that for you. I trust the wisdom of my soul more than the fears of my personality. I trust that every experience is here for my soul's healing. I trust that every experience is here for my soul's healing. As I trust the universe, I listen to divine guidance. As I trust the universe, I listen to divine guidance. And we'll have one more affirmation. And this one I invite you to repeat after me at home. We'll say it a couple times together. Here we go. I have trust and faith in the wholeness of my soul, and I am grateful. Say it with me, friends. I have trust and faith in the wholeness of my soul, and I am grateful. One more time. I have trust and faith in the wholeness of my soul, and I am grateful. I certainly am grateful for our time here together, my friends, and I hope to see you again next time. And right now, I'm going to hand it over to our friend Chris to finish out our broadcast.
Wow, thanks for sharing Gary Zukav's wisdom with us. That was really great. And thank you for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website, uofva.org, to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation. Support our ministry with your financial donation. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.